good morning. Hello, this is Tex. This is Tex Talks. I hope you're having an awesome day. Today's talk is going to be about speech, about what people are saying, what you're saying, the effects of what you say, and how you came about to say the things you said. It's a lot going into it. A lot of times people don't put a lot of emphasis on understanding their own speech. Sometimes they may heavily evaluate others, but they don't evaluate themselves or they don't reflect. There's several concepts going on here. One is more of an Eastern philosophy idea of idle speech, which is basically just speech to be speaking, to fill a silent spot. Idle, it's just random bits and bobs. And it's often done by people who will tend to be nervous around the silence. They need to have some kind of thing to keep the silence away, because when it's silent, either they reflect too much and don't like that, they don't want to go in and think about, what's going on, or their mind runs away. So it's a way to distract themselves from the present moment and not have their mind run away down a rabbit hole about, oh, I'm sitting here and the person's looking at me and I wonder what they're doing. You see how that rumination and the beginnings of a panic attack can set in for some people. Some people just don't like the silence. Sometimes people talk just because it's what they've always done. A lot of times they say things they've heard, so they're parroting, or what they learned growing up. They just blurt out things. Sometimes people are impulsive and just whatever they think, they blurt without thinking about it. And I think this is part of the reason why that kind of speech can be dangerous is since it's unfiltered and it doesn't have a purpose, you haven't thought through what it could actually do. In other words, this isn't necessarily always the kind of speech that spoke malice as a way of getting back at people or being angry. And sometimes it's not even about deliberate, overt manipulation, but it's just those things that come out of our mouth. Now, what do I mean? And I'll give you some examples, and then I'll go back into it, and I'll go back, hopefully, then remember to go back into explaining you how to avoid it and how to deal with it when someone else is doing it. So this may turn into a longer video, and if it is, sorry. I didn't mean to prattle on. Examples. It's possible that, you're sitting there and nothing's being said and somebody's uncomfortable and they, oh yeah, well, look at the weather. And oh, did you watch that game the other night? In this sense, there may be purpose, and the purpose of the person doing it is to break the silence. Sometimes that kind of conversation is what you call your small conversation at parties, small talk, trying to just slowly ease into finding out common ground, because some people are not very good at being direct. Many times that conversation will also though have lots of what I call pre-programmed, purposeless questions or comments. What do you do for a living? Which is a funny question, because don't talk to me because I'm a smart ass, unless you want some smart ass comments. If you ask me, what do I do for a living? Well, to live, let's see, I breathe, I consume some type of calories, usually with some vitamins and minerals, water, sleep, exercise helps extend the life. It real smart aleck answers true, but because most of the time when people ask that, they don't really want to know. It's kind of like that old, when people meet you and say, hey, how are you doing? They really don't mean how are you doing? They're just saying a pre-programmed set of words that is part of a ritual of conversation or talking where you ask someone how they're doing and they're expected to say fine, and you're like, oh, that's great, and they say, how are you doing? And I'm fine, and both of y'all are full of BS because you're probably not fine. You might be awesome, but odds are things aren't perfect. How's that? The other times that we'll do this is when we eventually are trying to get at what we really want to talk about, and we're not brave enough to go straight for it. We may want to ask a favor. So instead of asking a favor, we go through these rituals of, hey, how are you doing? What's going on? How are things going? That's nice. All the while we're hem-hawing around to going, will you help me move this Sunday? Sometimes it's that in between, purposeful and not, when you're trying to hem someone up, when you're just asking, oh, what are you doing this Sunday? Hoping they'll say, oh, I'm not doing nothing. And you're like, ha ha, I got you trapped now. And then they ask you, which to me is sad, because if you have to hem somebody up in order to get them to agree to help you, they're not agreeing to help you because they really want to. It's because you've kind of embarrassed them or cornered them. And do you really want to be that kind of person? And do you really want to depend on someone who has to be tricked into helping you? Sometimes it's more of a straight out manipulation in the sense that you want them to do something, but you don't ask directly. Parent, when they have one of their kids, and they're talking to them, can you babysit your little brother or your little sister or something this weekend? But instead of simply coming out and saying, "Oh, look, I have something I need to do. Could you go do that?" And this is especially, with older children, even adults who are out of the house, asking them to come do something for you. Instead of being direct and saying, "Please, I need a favor. Would you come help me by doing this?" They keep talking about, yeah, I need to go to this meeting, and your little sister's going to be at home all alone, and she is really young, and I really hate to do that. And you're like, what is the purpose of this conversation? And the person who's speaking, their purpose is they're hoping you'll volunteer. And if you remember the drama triangle, they're trying to get you to help them. They're playing a victim role. And I know some people don't like that word, but let's be for real. In this sense, it's the woe is me. I have to go to this meeting. I have things I got to do. But instead of just saying, will you come do this? They lay it all out there, even to the point of where, and this is where that manipulation, gaslighting, a whole combination of things comes in. If they don't catch on and volunteer, the other person will be like, "Well, I just thought you hearing my problems, you would volunteer to help if you really cared about me." See, there we go again. That's that passive aggressive go around. Or, well, if you really wanted to be a good daughter, if you really wanted to be a good son, if you really wanted to be a good, sister or brother, you would just want to do these things. And they still haven't asked you to do it. They're trying to get you to volunteer. It's that word for mandatory volunteering, which goes into, again, communication. It's not a request if you're not willing to take no for an answer. A person says no, then you're not requesting or asking them to do something. You're actually demanding, using different words, and you're going to keep pecking at them until they do what you want, which, again, not direct communication. You're manipulating or forcing other people to do what you want. Many times these forms of communication may not have a purpose. They can be very hurtful, though, because if you don't think about what you're saying, you could be triggering the other person. If you're not paying attention and being mindful and focusing, what are they doing? What am I doing? What is the purpose of my conversation? Then you may bring up a topic in your random conversation that's painful to the other person, or you may do something that brings back to them memories of things that upset them. Now, again, back to the idea that you're in charge of your own feelings. The thing is even being in charge of your own feelings, sitting there and putting up with somebody else, throwing in reminders of things that hurt, past traumas, past issues. Again, because this person is not being mindful of their conversation, they're just throwing stuff out there. It's very easy to not think through. I've made another video on the idea about, asking questions of people that are standard questions that people ask, which shouldn't be. Like asking, "Oh, when are you going to find somebody? When are you going to start dating? When are you going to settle down with one person? When are you going to get married? When are y'all going to have kids?" It's like this litany of questions that could be painful because there may be a reason for any one of those things that haven't happened. The person may not have met somebody because they don't want to, and it's not really any of your business why. Or they may have met somebody and it didn't go well and they don't want to talk about it. And again, it's not any of your business. They may have met somebody, but they don't want to bring them around you because they know you're going to ask those kind of questions and embarrass them. "Oh, I see y'all are dating. I hope, well, this one lasts longer. Maybe y'all will get together and get married. It's about time you settle down." Again, think about these conversations. When you hear them, you're just sitting there going, "Oh, God." And people do that as part of again, idle conversation. They don't really think through, what do I really want to know? Do I need to know? What is the purpose of this speech? Now, this breaks into some separations here. One of them being, people will tell me, "Well, why do I got to think about all that all the time? That's just too much thinking." And I'm like, "You're right. Be an oyster. Don't think. Consume and excrete. There you go. Perfect life." Or a rock. But if you're going to be a human being, it takes some thinking. You were given this gift of being able to think. Use it. Thinking about what it is you want, and then realizing that you have to observe what's being said. See, part of a good conversationalist, part of even someone who goes out and gives speeches. They're observing the crowd, the audience. They're seeing what effect it. If you start saying something and you see the other person reacting, you should notice that. And I have people then try to use that. Well, you said everybody's responsible for their own feelings, so I shouldn't have to watch them. Now you're twisting things. They may be responsible for their own feelings. Why would you go out of your way, though, to provoke, hurt, sadden, or just be careless? Again, you're being careless, you're being mindless instead of mindful. So thinking about what it is you want out of the conversation, what do you want to convey, or what do you want to get? What effect you're having on the other person. Part of this comes into people, using, like I said, that passive aggressive get around, not directly asking questions, but hinting. I always tease people and say it's that Southern thing. Instead of just saying, "Can I have a drink of water?" They sit there and go, "Oh, whew, it's hot in here. Oh, musty, it's dry. I sure could use something to drink. Oh my goodness, I'm so parched." Instead of just saying, "Hey, can I have a glass of water?" People are actually taught it's rude to ask directly. And they also will say other people should just know. Anybody with, see, this is where comes into people will look at you and go, "Well, you should have known what I wanted. It was obvious what I wanted. I wanted a drink of water. Couldn't you tell that?" I don't know. And wanting the other person to guess around, because maybe you didn't want a glass of water. Maybe you wanted a Coke. Maybe you wanted a cold beer. Maybe you wanted a hot cup of tea. The thing is why not ask for what you want? You can do it with manners and courtesy and all that good stuff. You can say, "I'm really thirsty. If possible, could I please have a cup of tea?" Why do people do that? Again, habit. Another one is that they themselves may have grew up in a house that you're not supposed to ask directly. That's the rule in that house. So everyone had to learn how to ask indirectly. Some houses, it's even almost abusive. You're not supposed to be seen as a child. You're supposed to be over in the corner doing your thing and not bothering anybody. Or you're supposed to be seen but not heard. So there's all these different rules. So how does someone who can't ask for what they want get what they want? Well, they have to give the clues. Whew. Oh, again, I pick on Southern people, but I are one, so I get away with that. The thing is these rules that are built into the conversation end up causing more problems than they solve. You can have polite conversation without having to be indirect in everything you say, unless indirect has got a purpose. Again, why? Ask yourself that. And are you getting what you really want? Do you go away mad because the other person didn't notice what you wanted and didn't give it to you? And all you had to do was ask for it directly. And why can't you ask for it directly? Again, it's about reflecting. What is it you want to accomplish? Even does what you have to say have a purpose? Now, again, sometimes the purpose is just easing the tension. Sometimes the purpose of the conversation is to help the other person feel comfortable. Because if you notice someone sitting at the end of the table and they're very quiet, you might have to engage them in conversation to help them relax. That could be your goal. Then your goal is to know that I need to say things that will help that person engage, become part of the conversation or become part of the crowd or relax or have a good time. I want to make it easy on them. So what I do is, I ask them, "Well, hey, how have you been doing lately?" Now, usually when I ask people, how are they doing? I really mean it. I want to know how you're doing. Sometimes I'll ask you, how's the world treating you? Because that gives me a more direct question of what's happened to you, and then when you say that, then I can, give me that information. Then I can go, okay, and how do you feel about that? And give you a chance to tell me instead of assuming, oh, you must feel bad. You must feel sad. You must be upset. You must be happy. Again, assuming makes an ass out of you and me. So be careful with it. Ask the questions and gather the information. And again, think about the purpose of your conversation. That's why I said it's very difficult for some people to understand the difference between idle conversation and conversation that sounds idle but has a purpose. And that purpose could be for good or for bad, per se. In other words, it could be to help the person relax. Or the person doing it might be trying to manipulate. Oh, well, I just thought you'd want to be a good husband and help me with the dishes. Instead of just saying, would you please help me with the dishes? I thought you would want to be a good wife and offer to do this or do that. Instead of just saying, while you're up getting your own soda, can you grab me one? Think about what you're saying. This is where that mindfulness comes back in. Ask yourself, if you have things that you say on cue, you have canned responses and that's an old sales talk, a canned presentation, because a lot of salespeople will learn to say things a certain way, but also a lot of people in the general public learn to respond a certain way or do certain things, and they've canned it. It's those pre-programmed. Remember, again, way back in them videos, I discussed how we have subroutines in our brain that allow us to not have to think, because somewhere in our brain, it's not necessarily always that it wants to be lazy, but it is trying to conserve energy. And it takes a lot of energy for the brain to think through things. So sometimes the brain will just say, oh, I've got a routine for that. When I do this, hit the subroutine, let it take over the program, and I don't have to think about stuff. I just do. Like when you're going to open a door, you just do. You don't sit there and think about it. When you're walking, hopefully you don't think about it. You do it and you walk. Because when you start to think about it, that's where people get clumsy. There's so many things that we do that with. The thing is, though, is if we let that run amok in our life and everything becomes a subroutine, then nothing is thinking and nothing is engaging. And then we end up reacting when, if we would have been thinking to begin with, we probably could have avoided the situation, not had that problem rise, all kinds of things. And yourself, if you're doing it, is to think about stuff. Why do I ask people that? Why do I just, every time I see a married couple, I'm like, oh, when are y'all having kids? Why do I say that? Where did that come from? And do I really want to know? Do I even care? Or am I just idly saying something that may be hurtful to the other person on the other end? You also have the occasion where you're doing something because you was taught to do it as a child and it's painful not to do it. Asking directly, you have to think about it, reflect on that. When you were a kid, were you punished for being direct? Were you punished for asking for what you want? Or were you told, maybe you were told those are bad manners, don't do that? And reflect on, what would you want done to you? Do you want the person to hint around all day long at what they want, or you just want them to come out and ask? Do you want the person to be honest with you and say up front, I need help with something. Will you please help me? Instead of pinning you into a corner. How do you feel when you get pinned? If you don't like it, why are you doing it to other people? The last part is, how do you handle other people who are doing those things to you? Or you're with a person who uses that kind of conversation, or they're not direct. Remember, this is going back to the drama triangle. When a person is playing that role where they're like, oh, this is so horrible and it happened to me and I can't do this on my own, and oh, it'd be so nice if I had help, and all these things. When they're doing that, if you realize that's what they're doing, and you only do that by reflecting on what's going on, what's being said. Sometimes you get a tingling feeling in the back, the hair standing up, and you're like, something's going on. Pay attention to that. And then when the person does that, you then have the option of how you want to handle it. You can look at them and go, that really sounds bad. I'm sure you can figure it out. You have a nice day. Go. Or if you want to, and this is if you want to, you have the time, you have the ability, and you want to help, then you can ask the person, I'm sorry, is there a question there? Are you asking for help? Now, the responses can be very interesting because the person might get very offended. Well, and then gaslight, here it comes. You should just know that I needed help. You should have just offered. If you had manners, you wouldn't say that to me. You would just offer. And again, your response to that can be, oh, you're right. I probably don't have manners. Again, are you asking for help? Basically, without any malice, without raising your voice, just go back to baseline. You're probably right. I don't have manners. You're probably right. I'm rude. Or you can just say, oh, could be. That leaves it up in the air. No argument. But if you get into an argument about whether you had manners, you've avoided the actual topic of, do you or don't you want me to do something? It's not your job to teach the other person unless that's what you have been asked to do. Remember what I said? There's these occasions where people ask for help. In this case, the person isn't saying to you, oh, please, Tex, teach me how to ask for things. Now, if they come to me in a therapy session, different. We've already established what their goals are. Maybe they are wanting that, or maybe there's a problem that they can't get around, and I let them know learning to do this will help you get that. In the average conversation out in the world, though, it's not my job to correct. I am not the emotional police person out there. I am not the manners protocol person. I don't have to sit there and go, well, if you had just asked directly for this and that, da, 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 da. See, I've went into that where I'm giving advice without eliciting a response from the other person. Do you want the advice? Now, if I say, is there a question? I'm trying to clarify for me. They may ask me, well, why are you asking that? Because I'm confused in the conversation. A lot of things were said. Not sure if you wanted something or if you wanted me to just listen. See, there's that thing I went to and said, when you're couples, please think about this. When someone comes to you in a relationship and starts talking about work, problems, whatever, it's your job to establish what you want to do here. Is it help they want, or is it just a sounding board to listen they want? And if you would like your relationship to blossom and bloom and be much better, clarify what it is they want. If they're offended that you don't just know, that's your sign there's a problem. Maybe it's that person's belief system that everybody else should be psychics. Everybody else is Miss Cleo for a day.
The cards can reveal things that you will never see by yourself. Call me now for your free tarot reading.
And they should just know what they want. It's not your job to just know what they want. Sometimes you get lucky. If you guess, what's the old saying? Even a blind squirrel occasionally finds a nut. You know what? You may actually be able to do that, or you may get it wrong. And then they're mad at you for getting it wrong because you should have just knowed what I wanted to get. See, we're right back in that road of what you should. You see how all these things that I talk about come into play? Those words like should, try, all those things. So here we're back to this idea of establishing what's going on. And if the other person wants it, and sometimes the other person will grasp and realize they weren't being clear. Sometimes it's a case of where I've heard people say that, oh, I'm saying that out loud because that's how I talk. That's the way I process things in my mind. Could be. Some people do that. Or I'm saying that so I'll remember it. Or I'm saying that so that I'll understand it. Or I'm saying that to see what you think. And that's why I said, as the speaker, it's your job to see the response. Because if the other person's triggering at what you're doing, your intent may not be to trigger them. It is triggering them though. So why keep doing it? Think about it. Go, maybe I can change that. Sometimes you can tell them and they don't get triggered that, oh, that's just my way of doing. I talk out loud. That doesn't mean they have to take that from you. Maybe, that gave an explanation. And again, this is about conversation. Giving someone an explanation for something that hurt their feelings or upset them, or they let themselves get upset by, however you want to phrase that, having a reason doesn't justify doing it. Sometimes it might be better for you to just go, oh, I apologize. Let me not do that. Instead of doing, again, the passive aggressive, oh, if that bothers you, I'll quit. Here we go again. Oh, no one else is upset by that. Everyone else understands what I mean. See, we're going back into those gaslighting situations of the past. See how complicated this could get very quick. And the thing is, to avoid the complications and avoid the problems, first ask yourself, why am I saying what I'm saying? How can I say it differently so it's easier and more palatable for people if you want to get along with that person? If you don't give a damn about that person and they're just going to have to adapt to you, well, maybe you need to come see somebody for therapy because there's something else going on there. Being able to look at someone else and go, are you asking me for help? Are you asking me to do this? And when the other person either won't reassess and go yes or no or whatever, and they keep throwing the hints at you, it's not your responsibility to be the decipherer of all the clues. You are not the treasure hunter here, unless that's what you just like doing. And going back to baseline and calmly going, okay, from my understanding, you just want to let me know what's bothering you. You're not asking for help. Thanks. I'm glad I established that. Or, okay, yes, I can help, or no, I can't. Again, it's about you remaining calm and pulling back from the situation, which can be very tough if you've been triggered. It can be very tough if you're upset. So now you're starting to see how this whole thing takes some reflection and thought on how you've been talking, how other people talk, and how you react, what you're doing. And again, a little of that brain power to go through and understand these things. I understand. It's a lot. I don't expect anyone to do it fast. The thing is making slow, steady progress towards going, what is the purposes of my conversation? What am I doing? Sometimes it's about saying nothing at all. Person's going off about a problem and you just sit and listen. At some point, they may say, well, aren't you going to help me? It takes a lot of patience sometimes to wait for that and then go, are you asking for help? I thought you was just letting me hear your problems and using me as a sounding board, because sometimes maybe they are. Oftentimes people will try to help and tell the other person what to do. And this is the interesting thing. When you go to somebody and you're just wanting to sound off, don't assume they know that. In fact, probably your more likely bet is they're going to try to tell you what to do. So if you start off the conversation with literally, I don't want advice, I just want to think through. I need to reflect and think through this. That allows them to get in the conversation and go, oh, okay, interesting. And did you think about this? Or how did you feel about that? Or if that's what you want. Because otherwise, many times you will go to somebody and say, I'm having a problem. And they're like, well, this is what you should do. And then you don't feel heard and you feel like the other person's ordering you what to do. And there's one other person in the world telling you what to do and another person in the world telling you that you're wrong. Ooh. That's a whole nother rabbit hole. So that was a lot to take in. So in summation, bring it together. There's you thinking about what you're saying to other people. What is the goals of your conversation? How are they reacting? And are you accomplishing your goals? Also thinking about if you're not doing that, why are you not doing that? Why are you asking for things indirectly? I mean, because I have had people tell me, well, if you ask for direct, everything you ask for, they say no. All right, then quit asking. But I want them to do this. Okay, again, whole another conversation there. If people are doing it to you, being able to clarify and clear, keep your head, be calm, step back. You don't have to jump in. You don't have to play in the drama triangle. Again, you can simply go, oh, well, I'm sure you got that handled. Have confidence in you. Back out of it. Back out of the conversation. Go to the bathroom, splash your face with cold water, take a deep breath and go, here we go. Get yourself together and then go back out. Use your coping skills. Think about what you're saying. Think about what the other people are saying. Be calm about it. Be patient. Be reflective. Listen. If you have any questions, if you need a follow-up, if you need anything specific, if there's anything you want to hear more of, because I have had people say, I would like to hear more of a certain topic. And sometimes I have those conversations in person, and maybe I need to have them on camera go into more detail. But again, that only happens when you ask for it. That way I know what you want. Don't be afraid to ask. Worst that can happen is I say no. All right. Y'all have an awesome day. Thank you.